remain passionate about it and remain curious about it, because the solution that you are used to may not be the only solution. There are different opportunities, there are different solutions, which may be just as good or maybe even better.
Are you content in your business? I'm Si McMahon, and I'm on a mission to help business leaders and brand owners succeed through sharing stories, advice, and inspiration. This is the Content in Business podcast. Welcome to Content in Business. We're sharing stories, advice, and inspiration to help your business succeed. And today I'm with Ton Knipscheer, a highly respected international packaging consultant and executive director of the European Co-Packers Association. Hi there, Ton. Thanks for joining us.
Hi there, Si. Thanks for having me.
I hope I got your name right at the start there, actually. I never checked before we kicked off.
That's fine. I've learned to spell my name in different languages, and I know the KN is always a bit of a difficulty in English. We have a hard K in Dutch, but it's fine.
Okay, that's good. That's good to remember. That if it's any consolation, I have the same thing with my last name. So I've been called Macahoon, Macamon, all sorts of variations. So, well, like I say, thanks for joining us. And first of all, let's hear from you about the businesses you're involved in, and go from there.
Yeah, as you said, I'm a packaging consultant. I've been in packaging longer than I care to remember. I literally grew up between packaging machines. My parents ran packaging companies, had their own printing house, had a co-packing company. So I was able to drive a forklift truck sooner than I was able to drive a car. So that's my experience in packaging. And then when I later went and made it my career, in previous life I was responsible for the Pringles can, and everybody of course know that one. I've been responsible for the Pringles cans for 8 years in Europe, and since 2016 I'm an independent packaging consultant, and since I would say 3-4 years I'm on the board of the European Co-Packing Association, and late last year I accepted the role for executive director to help them grow the association with more members in co-packing and co-manufacturing. That's me in a nutshell.
That's very interesting. The kind of journey that you've been on, and I guess you can answer for this for one or the other or both of your roles as it stands today. How has the journey panned out? Has it been what you expected, in line, or exceeded, or what?
I think, to quote a famous Liverpudlian, life is what happens when you're sort of trying to live it. You plan a lot of things, and then things make another turn, make a U-turn, and they go around, and you try to adapt to it. I've worked for 27 years for a German family-run company, the Weidenhammer Packaging Group, for which I ran their Dutch operation. I was responsible for their site with the Pringles account in Belgium, and I had the privilege of working in their Bradford location for a year and a half. And then they were acquired by a big American corporation, and I decided I didn't want to work for corporate companies anymore. And then I became an independent packaging consultant. I've worked with lots of small family-run companies. I prefer working with family-run companies. This is something I discovered because then you have short directions, you have short connections with the management, which is always good. And it also helped me continue my journey into packaging. I'm passionate about packaging. I always say to people I try and mentor in packaging, once you're in packaging for longer than 2 years, there's no way you're going to get out. You will always stay in packaging because it's addictive. Everything needs to be packed. Even a car is packed. And then if you see the current debate going on about sustainable packaging, and everybody is sort of aiming their anger at packaging and about plastics, and it's all very emotional debate. And I can get passionate discussions with people who will start complaining about hammering on about how packaging is polluting the world and how it's doing harm. But if you look at the carbon footprint of packaging compared to, let's say, a piece of steak, it's 1% versus 99%. The steak has a far higher impact. Packaging is actually there to protect the product. So I think this is something which people should not ignore. If you look at, for example, pharmaceutical packaging, their packaging is your second physician because it contains the directives and the instructions for the patient to use and to look at afterwards once they're at home and they forgot the instructions from the physician. Mm-hmm. So they can look at the packaging and say, okay, I should dose this twice a day, 1 tablet per time. This is something that packaging does. If you give that product unpacked, they're lost. And I think that goes for lots of other products as well. We have a discussion here in the Netherlands about cucumbers being wrapped in foil, and people say this is unnecessary. That may be so in season, but people want to have cucumbers out of season as well. And then the shelf life of a cucumber grown in a greenhouse is considerably lower. It's probably restricted to 2 days. And if you wrap it in a foil, it can be kept in the household for about a week, and maybe even longer, because the moisture out of the product doesn't release. And this is something where people always look at the negative side of packaging, but we don't have a packaging problem. We have a waste problem. People littering the packaging, the Pringles can or the Coca-Cola bottle on the beach was not put there by Pringles or by Coca-Cola. It was put there by a consumer who was ignorant and didn't put it in the garbage can. So you can start complaining to the brands and that the brand owners are responsible for that, but it's not the brand owner who did that. So at the moment we are in a perfect storm. We have rising costs of just about everything. We have a lack of skilled labor. We have a critical consumer who says that they will buy sustainable once they're in front of the shelf, and they have a choice between a non-sustainable product and a sustainable product. But the sustainable product is about 10p more expensive. They'll go for the cheaper one. So that's what we call the say-do gap. So you can make a packaging more sustainable. You can make a product more sustainable. If there's an on-cost, the average consumer will go for the cheap version. So that's, I think, quite a big challenge. And then, of course, we have the increasing pressure of the NGOs. Yeah, I can raffle around this for forever. As I said, I'm quite passionate about packaging. The growing pressure of the NGOs and the regulatory affairs about recycling plastics and recycling paper. There's a lot of things to say about that.
It's interesting that you say that, that it is about a behavioural issue rather than
yes.
than the actual material itself or the method itself. And especially it's because in the past week or so, Coca-Cola have recently done a new campaign, haven't they? They're kind of showing their cans and bottles crushed up, and the whole "Recycle Me" message, which I think's got quite a bit of coverage.
Exactly, and quite rightfully so, because they feel the responsibility of the consumers being put on them, and from the NGOs and the authorities increasing the pressure. And they know that even if they're not to blame for certain points, they will still get the hit, and they will take the hit, and that could lead to reducing market share, which as a company like Coca-Cola or Pringles or McDonald's or Burger King would have a dramatic impact. And like I said, if you go through a McDrive and you take your stuff and you don't put it afterwards into the garbage can, is that fault of McDonald's, or is that the fault of the consumer who didn't want to get out of his car?
Especially when companies like McDonald's have put a lot of more recyclable products in place, or seen to be more recyclable. I know we've had the discussion previously about plastic versus paper, and actually, the underlying carbon numbers and everything. But ultimately, they've been trying to make moves to make it easier, to make it. It's like, you could potentially have a McDonald's meal now, and all of the components could be paper, for instance. That's super easy then to just put in the paper recycling.
Exactly.
But you're quite right. You still see McDonald's packaging floating around the street or dumped at the road.
And then you can prevent this. Of course, there are several systems to fight that. One could be a deposit system, a deposit return system, which is in place in certain countries. But having said that, when I go out for a run here in the area where I'm at, on a Sunday morning, I'll find these little cans with energy drinks. I won't mention the name, which are dumped on the side. People pay about 3, 4, 5 euros for a can like that in the evening when they go out in the bar. I wouldn't think that they will actually be inclined to sort of bring that empty can back for 50p or even for maybe €1. But maybe somebody else will pick it up and bring it back, and then it's out of the environment. So I think this is where a deposit return system could be a potential solution. But then, of course, you have to make the consumer. It's all about taking the consumer on board. Like you said, McDonald's could have the biggest amount of garbage cans around it, and even people picking up on a Sunday morning or a Saturday morning from what people dropped out of their car. But and it's still a matter of bringing the consumer on board. You have to educate the consumer. The consumer has a responsibility here. And I think this is what people tend to forget a lot.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I can see that you're, massively passionate about packaging, and I've got to be careful not to get dragged into a whole just a pure packaging discussion, because obviously I've had a career in it as well to some extent. But what is it that attracts you? I mean, you've spoken about some of the cultural things, you've spoken about some of the challenges, but what is it that really attracts you into packaging, into working with packaging?
I think what attracts me in packaging is the beauty of packaging, because certain products, like for example ready foods, are not very attractive to look at, or powdered foods are not very attractive. It's the packaging with the instructions and with the user friendliness of opening it quite easily, dosing it quite easily, transporting it, and of course protecting it, as I said. And providing some shelf life. I think this is where it comes in, and this is where the beauty comes in. And if you look at it from a design point of view, with the instructions and serving suggestions, what you can do, you can actually bring people on board. Nowadays, the average consumer has about 20 minutes to prepare a meal every day. In days of my mother and my grandmother, they had more than an hour. So that has an impact on the way you treat your food, on the way that food needs to be prepared to be cooked. So you have vegetables which are pre-cut, and they're in the bag, and you open the bag, you throw it into the pan, and then you work with that, and you add some herbs, you add some spices, maybe add a food mix, and then you're done. And with in the old days, the women had much more time to cook, and therefore they took that time. And this is where the vegetables were pre-cut, and you didn't have these sauces in premixes. And now you do. So these have to be packed, and these have to be packed in a proper way. I know that my mother went out shopping, and she went shopping 3-4 times per week. Nowadays, the average consumer goes out once a week, so they expect their milk to stay fresh for a week at least. If you're in the supermarket and you see a bottle of milk which has a best before date within the next 2 days, you'll leave it. You pick another one. In the old days, with the milkman coming around, it didn't really matter because he came again the next day. Same thing went for the butcher. you cooked it the same day or the day after. Now you buy your meat in a tray and you cook it in 5 days maybe, or you put it in the fridge. So it's a completely different landscape. And people who say, oh, maybe we should go for a packaging-free supermarket, they tend to ignore the fact that certain people just don't have the time for that anymore and have to bring your own containers and then refill it. Who's responsible for if your container isn't clean? Who's responsible if you spill product on the floor of the shop? What happens with allergens? What happens with hygiene? This is where packaging comes in, and this is where packaging offers a lot more than people tend to give it credit for.
I 100% agree. On the consulting side then, so you started in 2016, and it sounds like you've built up quite a roster of clients that you work with. How have you got to that point? How's that? How have you built that business?
I already had quite a large international network when I started as an independent packaging consultant, and by being present at conferences, going to trade shows, packaging trade shows, but also other trade shows, I was able to grow that network quite extensively, and then being present on in conferences, doing presentations, doing keynotes about sustainability, about packaging, then you tend to get noticed, and people start asking you if you want to say something. In a few weeks' time, I'm going to talk about sustainable packaging at a conference in Milan. It is these things where if you're passionate enough, people tend to recognize that. And I know a bit too about marketing. I know a bit too about sales. I have a slightly technical insight into how processes run. I was responsible for a factory in the Netherlands, so I know production processes. I know about OEE, so I can see the whole picture. I'm not a specialist in that sense, but I know I can oversee the whole picture. And this is where I think I am a great fit or a good fit for family-run companies who want to extend their business and help them with business development.
On the marketing side, you mentioned it there. How do you market yourself and your business currently? What do you find that really works for you, and what do you find a challenge?
What I find really works for me is LinkedIn. With distance, I'm not active on any other social media, to be honest. So I only have experience with LinkedIn. I'm a boomer, as you may have guessed. So I'm not on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook. What I find also very rewarding and very effective are going to trade shows, going to exhibitions, going to conferences, and network with people there. The challenge which I have, but that's a personal thing, I do not believe, or I'm not a strong advocate of cold calling. I don't really like cold calling because, especially nowadays, you always call it at the wrong time. So I don't like doing that, so I try to avoid that. It's not my strength, but what I think I'm pretty good at is being visible on LinkedIn. My profile is quite extensive. I regularly post on it. I do comments on it, and then you get recognized. I think this is how we met as well, on LinkedIn. Yeah,
and like you say, the events side of things as well, they go hand in hand, don't they? Because I mean, I was literally in the pub last night and just ended up talking with someone, and the next thing you know, we were connected on LinkedIn because there was an opportunity to maybe work together. So it's a good bridge between the digital and the physical world.
It was quite funny because during the pandemic, I started working with a company in Germany. And I remember they were all millennials. It was a startup scale-up company, and they all started with, all these exhibitions are gone, and it's going to be Teams now forever, and everything's going to be done online. I said, well, first of all, let's see how the pandemic runs out, but I'm sure that it's not just going to be on Teams and online, because in communications, as we know, 65% at least is nonverbal communication. So if you do this online and you can maybe see a face sometimes, that's it. But you don't see, in quite a few occasions, people switch off the camera. So what do you see? You're just talking to a screen, which you could have done over the phone. So there's no benefit. And I think if you don't catch people's non-verbal communication is different, is not consistent to what they're actually saying, you can't interact with that. So I think, like you said, live communication, standing in front of somebody or at least seeing the upper side of their body and their faces is critical. And the whole online environment has put a stop to that. And I think it's good that you do certain first communications, first interactions with people online, but then at the next opportunity you have, try and find an opportunity to meet.
Well, obviously, a massive challenge in, the written word is the miscommunication in terms of reading the tone of voice that happens so much. We'll know about, an innocent text message being read wrong and, something rubbing up someone the wrong way or something like that. And I think people then, same in social media, it's hard to judge even through a message, direct messaging or something like that, like you mentioned about cold calling, but cold kind of outreach or whatever, can be misconstrued, can be misunderstood. And I think that's probably why the rise of video on social media has become so prevalent, because there is that body language, that extra level of tone of voice that you can read and everything. But yeah, ultimately, like you say, the in-person events is the ultimate, really. Being in person is the ultimate communication.
Yeah, because the online events, and I regularly take part of webinars and these sorts of things, which is usually quite interesting. But sometimes, but then you have a targeted topic which you know that you're going to, and then you see it, so you're not surprised anymore, or roughly you're not surprised that often. But if you go to an event, to an exhibition, for example, and you know that you are looking for, let's say, a folding carton supplier, and you will find that, but you also see suppliers of other materials which may give you ideas about, oh, I can do it also this way, or maybe I should look at this as an alternative. So you get surprised. It's like going into a supermarket and looking at the different products. Although you're looking for, let's say, a cucumber, you also see whatever kind of vegetable, and then you may be inspired for other recipes. But if you go online and you click on cucumber, you'll get a cucumber. And that's the same for going to an event instead of visiting something like a webinar online, which is good and very, very pointed, very focused, but it sort of dismisses the chances of being inspired by other things.
And I can tell just by speaking to you a couple of times that you enjoy that networking as well. I can tell that conversation and that debate with actually back and forward with people.
I call myself a matchmaker in packaging because I know about packaging and I'm passionate about it. But I am able to match people with a need, with a demand, with people who have something which could be an alternative solution for them. And this is what I do for a living. So I make in packaging. That works out quite nicely, I must say. Because I know that certain people whom I've spoken to in the past, then after 2-3 years come back to me and say, I know you were talking about folding carton. Could you help me on this? And would you know anybody who can help me with this or this project? And I'm looking for these and these characteristics. Would you have a solution for that? Yeah. And if I don't, I'll know somebody who does. It's not, I don't know everybody, but I know people, other people who know more people. And then this is what networking is all about.
And there's a book by Daniel Priestley called Key Person of Influence. I don't know if you've read it, but he says for any business, to really succeed, you need a key person of influence, and it's usually, you know, you as the owner or senior person within the business. And then he goes on to say, if you or someone isn't the key person of influence for your business, isn't a key person of influence, then your job is to become a key person of influence, because
exactly,
it's all based on the strength of your network. It's all based on the strength of your connections and reputation in your sector.
So somebody once told me, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm not even claiming to be an expert on any kind of material. I always call myself material agnostic. So I've been in rigid paper, I've been in flexible paper, in folding cartons, but also in flexible and rigid plastics. So I'm material agnostic, and every material has their own benefits for certain products, fit for purpose. Apologies. But I'm not claiming to know all about rigid paper. I'm not claiming to know all about flexible or rigid plastics. But I know people who do, who know more about it. And if they don't know the answer to my question, they will know somebody who does. And then it's also a matter of people respecting you enough that they will give you that answer, give you that information.
I love that. So what's the vision from this point forward then, for yourself, for the kind of businesses you're involved in? What's the kind of ultimate goal now?
My ultimate goal at the moment is for the role as executive director for the European Co-packing Association. The association started in 2009, and it started very small in the Netherlands, and now it's grown to a larger European situation, as the name suggests. We have members now in Poland, Denmark, Germany, all sorts of other places. We're trying to grow that more into Southern Europe. And what I'm trying to do, and I know how my parents, when they started the co-packing company, they struggled to get all the information which they need. We are now trying to provide these informations to our members, like best practices. I'm currently setting up a workshop for best practices on legal sites, something that the average co-packer or contract manufacturer does not have, because they are usually very agile, very small, lean operations, where sometimes management gets on the forklift truck or gets behind the machine. And this is the kind of thing we're trying to help them with. Secondly, we're trying to sort of be their advocate towards the brand owners. We are seeing more and more that brand owners are pulling back into actually building the brand, because that's what they're good at. They know how to build a brand. They know how to put it in position number 1 or number 2 on the shelf. But actually producing it, especially if they're large international corporates, they're not so flexible on that, because their time to make the decision is quite long. Their time to release the capex to actually produce it is quite long. And the average product nowadays doesn't have that time anymore. Time to market is critical. Life cycle of a product has become a lot shorter than it was, let's say, 5 or 10 years ago. And the amount of SKUs in a product, the amount of variance in a product is far, far larger than it used to be 5 or 10 years ago. And then you have to be able to adapt your production processes to that, your distribution processes to that. And this is where the big corporates with productions are usually not so very good at. They are good at making 1,000 sachets per minute of a particular product. But if marketing says, let's do a 10% promotion with 10% extra free in it, they go like, that's going to be complicated, and it has to be running for 2 weeks in order to get some ROI on it. And this is where contract manufacturers and contract packers come in. And
because they would ask them to do it for that limited time.
And as I said before, certain brands actually just invent the brand, invent the idea and the marketing behind it, and then job it out to a contract manufacturer to actually produce it. And there are some very well-known brands in Europe, but also in the US, where the brand owner produces just the run, and everything else is done outside. If you see the growth, the potential, or the growth of the contract manufacturing market globally, it's expected to grow about 60% in the next 5 years, which is massive. But like I said, they fill the gaps that the brand owners can no longer fill.
So you're talking about,
this is where my passion is really.
So you're talking about kind of providing support and guidance and education to those businesses through the association. What do you see as the kind of challenges there, or the biggest challenges to be able to do that?
One of the challenges, and there's something I learned the hard way as well. I always say to these people, I've earned every gray hair. If you go to a situation where you are, as a co-packer or a contract manufacturer or any kind of packaging supplier, you start your first dealings with a big corporate, they'll put an NDA on the table, and the NDA is 15 pages, and you go through this. It's all very difficult legal texts. You go through this, and they expect you to sign it there on the spot. You're like, gosh, that's a lot of info. How do I read this? And this is something where we as an association, with legal support, can inform our members that you do not automatically sign at the cross, but you actually read it first, and then you say, please allow me some time to check this, and maybe give them something like your own template, and address it and look at these things more consistently, because this is where a company can actually fail if they accept all consequential damage, or they sign away their intellectual property. These are the kind of things that, as a small family-run company, you may not even think about, because this is not the way you tick. Why would they tick like that? But sometimes they do. And this is where an association can help. And we have no other benefit from it other than to help our members.
And what about on the consultancy side? I know you're really, really focused on the association side, but it sounds like you're still going every day on the, working with your clients and everything. Where's the vision for that side of things?
For the consultancy side, it's about business development, helping companies in certain parts of Europe, trying to get into markets where they first had no idea that they could actually be there and show their product. And for example, I'm now working with a company from Greece who makes really, really beautiful injection molded packaging. But up until a few years ago, they were focused completely on just the Greek market. Recently, their new business development director reached out to me and said, can you help us develop into the Northwestern European market? Because that's a nice and interesting market, we think. Well, we've done 2 exhibitions together, and they go like, okay, good. Let's build on this. And this is where I can be of assistance. I direct them to the trade shows to be at. I direct them to the platforms to be present at. Bring them to certain target group exhibitions where their potential customers are. This is the kind of thing I like, and then I sort of connect the dots with them.
And when people see the title packaging consultant, there's an assumption that that's on a technical level, that's on a design level. But actually what you're talking about there is exactly as you said about matchmaking and relationship building and activity, kind of, support and guidance there.
Yeah, correct. Although having said that, I work with the Pack Hub in the UK and also on technical sides, because I have seen a lot of operations in people packing products, but also people making packaging. So I know a bit of the pitfalls where you can stumble over, and so you don't have to reinvent the wheel if you talk to one of the experts of the Pack Hub, or you talk to me. and there are lots of other people around as well who can help you avoid the pitfalls which you may have to go through if you go into this without any experience. So this is where I come in together with my colleagues from the Backup or other ones to actually provide the experience and to avoid falling into the same trap we did before when we were young.
And just for everyone listening, the Pack Hub, obviously we've previously interviewed Paul from the Pack Hub as well. So the kind of tenuous link there. But if you've not caught that episode before, make sure you go back and listen to it.
Yeah,
but
really worth it.
And Paul talks very candidly about some of the learnings he's had and some of the times he's made mistakes and learned from them and pushed through. So it's a very, very interesting one. And on that note, I guess
he's right about that. We all make mistakes. So
yeah, well, yeah, and I absolutely stand by the statement that failure is the path to success. On that point, the kind of final question for me is what one piece of advice would you give to somebody in your position?
One of the things I've always done, and my kids sometimes hated me for it, every vacation I went on, you could find me in a supermarket and probably longer than people wanted. I've sometimes been escorted out of a supermarket in the old days, lifting up packaging and watching it and seeing how people packed a certain product in a different region, why olives were packed in a can in the UK and in a glass jar in Spain and in a flexible packaging in Italy. These are the kind of things which intrigue me, and I always lift up the packaging. Sometimes now I take a picture of it just to see. So. And remain passionate about it and remain curious about it, because the solution that you are used to may not be the only solution. There are different opportunities, there are different solutions, which may be just as good or maybe even better. So if you're curious about it and if you remain passionate about it, you'll always be open to learn. That's something, even at my age, I still learn. I'd be arrogant to say that I wouldn't.
What I'm hearing there is we've had a lot of people saying about learning and, as we said, just mistakes and things. Mm-hmm. But actually, I think just emotional connection to your craft, I think, is something that actually I'm not sure someone's said before on the show, but it's clearly always been an underlying thing. No one that we've interviewed, yourself included, have kind of not really cared about what they do. They're here talking to me because they're passionate about what they do. And it's almost like it goes without saying type of thing. Well, yeah, of course I love what I do. That's why I'm here kind of talking, but it's interesting that you point that out. Whether it's through an example of being thrown out of supermarkets or not, it is ultimately, I guess, if you're not passionate and massively into what you're doing, then nothing else really matters.
Correct, and life would be boring without a passion, wouldn't it? And secondly, it's rather a sad life if you do something where you're not passionate about it.
Yeah.
And I mean, passionate, and everybody has a different level of being passionate. But what I liked about it is recently I was over in the north of the UK with my youngest daughter, and we went into a supermarket. And first of all, she said, now, compared to 20 years ago, I'll come, I'll join you. We're going to the supermarket. And she was not lifting packaging up, but she was curious to see different products which we do not have in the Netherlands, or certain products which are unique to that specific region, and to learn about that. So this passion, and she's not in packaging, and she probably is not going to be in packaging, but this passion for discovering new things and looking at things which you may not have at home, is just, it was really nice to see that she took that over. She inherited that a little bit from me.
Well, as you said, it is infectious. Packaging in general.
Oh yeah, for sure. Addictive.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Ton. That was a really great conversation and really interesting as well. Insights into obviously yourself and your career and what you're up to, but also into packaging in general, which I personally find fascinating. Yes, really, really good. Obviously, we'll link to your various social profiles. Make sure your LinkedIn address is on there. But yeah, and I'm sure there's going to be reason to catch up again in the future. It sounds like there's lots going on, and I'm sure we'll have an update call at some point.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you for having me, Si, and good luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching to the show. Make sure you stay content in your business. Make sure you follow, subscribe, and any other sharing, liking capabilities that the platform offers you, because it really does make a difference to the show, and it makes a difference to your awareness of new episodes and new content that we're constantly putting out every week. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.